Good evening. This is another episode of Curing Racism. I am your host, Paz Simpson, along with my co-host, Mr. Paul Hoyt, as we come together this week to discuss the causes, the cures of racism. Paul, welcome to another
Hey,
week.
brother. How are you doing today, man? This is like only the second or third time we've talked today. I just love every conversation, and I'm looking forward to the conversation this afternoon about what we're calling reverse racial anxiety, which is, oh man, what a crazy thing for people to embrace. Reverse racial anxiety. So here, I'm
Yes.
sure you're wondering what the heck that means. So here's what it means to me. What it means to me
Yes,
is
sir.
that when people recognize that racism has caused an incredible negative impact on other people, whether it be here in the United States or in South Africa or wherever it happens to be, and they try to compensate for that in some way, would make reparations or at least help people out, because you've been pushing them down for such a long time. You want to give them a little bit of a helping hand and lift them up. There are people who say, oh no, you can't lift them up, you can't give them any little advantage at all, you can't try to compensate for the damage you've caused, because that hurts me. That hurts me. By favoring them in any small little way, it hurts me. You're actually committing racism and racial prejudice against me, and I'm the one who's being damaged now that you're trying to undo the damage that you've caused other people. And it freaking drives me crazy whenever I see that. What do you think, Paz? What's your reaction to that?
I
Are you
love
with
that
me?
you've brought that. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Got you fine.
I love that you brought that as a term for us to understand, because I think it's something that more need to recognize. We were reading an article um, when CNN was talking to Elon Musk's father, and for him to say that there was racism being portrayed against the Afrikaners, because he he really believed that the original people there in South Africa, that the black people were now the invaders, because when you talk about really restoring the equality, like there was a level of not just disconnect, but a level of right, for making
Yeah.
things right. So when we are dealing with curing racism, I think one of the biggest challenges is the grift, right? And that's those who uh, hustle, right, to hold on to what is as is, and then charlatans that take advantage of those who are looking for. Because if you heard me before, and we've talked about this many times, Paul, when you hear somebody scream white or black power, if they scream it too loud, there's usually some kind of grift behind it. There's usually some kind of angle that they're using. Love is love. I don't have this power. I'm a black man. According to what the world says, all I need is love. And when we can level that out, I think we do so much better. What do you think, my brother?
Well, you're absolutely right about that. I think love and kindness and compassion and understanding and forgiveness and all those other virtues of the spirit, are the way to healing. That comes after, as our subtitle of the book says, one conversation, one connection, one heart at a time. And it's when you get to that third step, when you really start to open up your heart, is that the healing can begin. And what's clear to me of those people who suffer from that reverse racial anxiety, they simply haven't gotten to that point at all yet. They feel hurt. They feel disadvantaged. They feel, I think it's because they have a poverty mindset, that they think that there's not enough to go around. And of course, that's what caused, racial discrimination and prejudice in the first place, is that, I need to get mine. And if that means that you can't have yours, then I'm willing to take that because I don't believe that there's enough to go around. And then when we try to compensate for that, it's the reverse. It says, oh no, I've got mine. I can't be generous to you in any way. I can't try to compensate for the sins of my father in any way because there's not enough to go around, because that takes away from me. Instead of recognizing that when we cure racism, that it builds the foundation for everybody. When we have pockets of poverty, when we have places and tribes that are being discriminated against and being prejudiced against, it causes the whole society to sink, as opposed to having strong foundations everywhere, where everybody's contributions are being realized, where everybody can have the promise, have the hope of being fairly treated and being fairly compensated for the work that they do, that it raises the entire society. So I think that there's this real, short-sightedness when it comes to thinking that there's not enough to go around and we have to put some people down instead of to raise us up, when I think the exact opposite is true. When we lift everybody up, we lift everybody up. As they say, a rising tide raises all boats.
I love
my
that.
Best on.
I think that was the best way to say it, right? A rising tide raises all boats. I think you said it when talking about thinking in lack. We've, racism is a form of violence, but the main form of that violence is usually in thoughts of lack, and that's poverty. You've heard me say this many times before. Poverty is violence, and poverty, we don't have enough money, right? It's a mindset, just thinking that we can't get more for, and that we have to take from and get more off. So when we think in abundance, right? I don't have to call, because I could never be, Paul. Paul doesn't have to compete with Paz, because he can never be Paz. But together, we can think that we couldn't be apart, right? Together, we can cure racism that we couldn't do if we tried to take it on as individuals.
Yeah, amen to that. Amen to that. I want to talk a little bit about DEI programs here in the United States. DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they were programs initiated in a lot of companies to try to even the playing field, to make sure that the populations and tribes were fairly represented, in their management structures and in their workforce, because they recognized, first of all, that that's the right thing to do. There's this moral requirement in order to do that, to be able to be kind to other people. And if you find that, your company is 99% white, you can be assured that there's something wrong with your hiring process, or you're prejudiced and discriminatory in that hiring process in some way. If you take a look at 100 executives at your company and none of them are Black and none of them are Asian and none of them are Hispanic, you got a problem in your company. when it comes to racial anxiety and racial conflict that you can cure. So we put DEI programs in place to make sure that we were treating people equally, that we had diversity in our workforce, that there was equity, that we were including all people and tribes. But recently, and by recently, I mean just in the past year or so with the current administration, those programs have come into disfavor because of this lack consciousness, because of this poverty consciousness, because there's somebody that screams that, I should have gotten that position, but you gave it to a different person instead. Or I would have been accepted into that university except for the DEI program that tried to have some quota attached to different tribes and different racial characteristics. So that is a prime example of reverse racial anxiety and a belief that there is not enough to go around, that when you are giving to somebody else, you are taking from me. And I don't think they get that we do have an opportunity, we do have a responsibility to treat people fairly, regardless of who they are, regardless of the color of the skin and the language that they speak. Over to you,
I
Patty.
love that you mentioned that. I love that you mentioned that because there's some healing that can be done, and there is a full ending. Healing can be done when people are able to be honest about where they are and what they've been through. See, that lack of, or that feeling of lack, so taps into your confidence. So we're also dealing with racism. It's usually not from the people at the top with the most. It's usually done from the people at the bottom with the least, because they feel like they are lacking. It's easy for administration to rile up those who are lacking because you get to keep talking about lack. That the immigrant situation. Immigrants are stealing all of our jobs, and realize none of us want to go into the fields. They were like, they weren't stealing any job that, so you had to start to change your policy a little. You really, in their mind, because there was a point that the administration said the immigrants are stealing the blacks. I don't think people really caught that. The immigrants were stealing the black jobs. So what are the black jobs? Well, we all farmers and sharecroppers. Because if you know me, I have two terrible heads. You don't want me to pick anything but my nose. So it is important that we understand that thought process. Like, thinking in lack, or are we thinking in abundance? Because in thinking in lack, right, that's where the racism comes. That's where the poverty comes. That's where the discrimination comes. But in abundant feelings, right? I love Paul for Paul, and Paul can love me for me. We were able to meet each other in a space and fall in love on a brotherly level was because we were in a space of abundance. No space at that time, no one's thinking about what they don't have. Everyone's trying to get more, right? And it's trying to get more. Easy for you to get to know someone because you to know that to get to that next space.
Right. I'm gonna offer a little reframe for people out there who may be sensing a little bit of that reverse racial anxiety. And the reframe goes like this: if there were 150 positions available at a company, and 10 of them were allocated to people who are Black, and 5 of them were allocated to Hispanics, and 5 of them were allocated to Asians, that means that 130 out of those 150 positions were allocated to white people. Don't think of those 10 black people or those 5 Hispanics or those 5 Asian people as your competition. Think of those 130 other white people that are your competition. Your job isn't to beat out those 20. Your job is to beat out one of those 130. So compete against people of your own tribe. Don't compete against people of the other tribe when it comes to getting that position, when it comes to getting that promotion. Recognize the advantage that you already have and compete fairly, in the lane that you can choose for yourself. Reframe that competition, that competitive spirit. Are you there, Paz?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There seems to,
yes.
Yeah. It may be the platform, but there always seems to be
I love that you
there seems to be a 5-second gap. Go ahead.
It seems to be a slight delay. But yes, I think what you said, and I'd like for you to someone who needed to hear that, because I think there is some power in when you think about those numbers, because we competing with, and I'll give a prime example. My freshman year at Lehigh they said we were the largest class of African American students. They had 6 students. We were 72.
Wow. It's just a little over 1%. So I'm sure there was somebody out there said, I would have got into Lehigh if it hadn't been for those 72 black kids. Instead of thinking that, man, I had 5,928 chances to get into here. If I could have just beat one of those 5,928 people, I would have gotten into Levi. All they had to do was reframe that just a little bit. And instead of condemning the programs that let those 72 in or accepted them, just taking personal responsibility for their own achievements and their own abilities. So I think that's one of the keys to curing racism is taking personal responsibility, to be the best person you can be, to be the most knowledgeable, to be the most desirable employee you can be, and not to disparage other people or blame other people for your lack of achievement.
I love that.
So we are about at 20 minutes or so.
Yes. So I want to make sure that anyone who needs of racial intense some curing racism, if you want any kind of racial sensitivity classing, want any kind of just building bridges, please go to curingracism.com, reach out to us, and let us know how we can be a better servant to you. Every Friday, myself and my co-author, co-partner in this movement will come to you, and we will discuss topics. We will discuss terms. We will discuss things that will allow you to see the causes that we can build the cure. Paul, the last word's yours, my brother.
If you haven't done so already, please go to Amazon and buy the book Curing Racism. You can buy the Kindle version and or the paperback version. They're very inexpensive. They're priced so that everybody can not only afford them for themselves, but they can afford to buy them as gifts for their friends, perhaps this holiday season. Read the book, study it, because we strongly believe that once you understand the causes of racism, tribal instinct, our natural aggressive nature, cultural conditioning, stereotyping, and the craziness that we have about making invalid generalizations. Once you really understand that the cures become obvious, and the cure is one conversation, one connection, one heart at a time. Thank you so much, Paz. Thank you so much for listening to two of us today. We appreciate you. Go get the book, read the book, think about the workshop, reach out to us. We want to help in whatever way we can. Thanks.